between family. Tickets can be a little bit cheaper in advance, so if you haven't gotten your significant other a Valentine's Day gift, this is your chance to really wow them. So really hoping people will come and support this event.
Sorry?
You were saying you're going to take your wife to this?
Yeah, no, that wasn't that, but yes. Sorry. I just remembered.
So yeah, hoping people support this event. It's good. Good cause scholarships that go through the town every year for students heading to college, and it's a good time.
All right, cool. And I to that point, that was the frozen assets thing. That question I got, which was from my kids, is whether it made it through the weekend, whether you know.
It
As far
hasn't.
as you
The
know.
contest hasn't started yet.
Okay,
so
I thought it started on they were receiving till the first. Okay, because we drove by and didn't see anything, so I was just wondering what.
she won't let it go down right away. So
Okay. Sounds
make
good.
sure it's frozen.
Yeah. All right. Good plan.
My guess was that there would be no more winter, which would really help us with snow and ice. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm cheering for.
Yeah. Me too. Okay, so no presentations either. Moving on.
Moving on.
Okay. And we're just going to bump real quick before we get to the audit review and financial report. We've got item 8, which is appointments and resignations. We've got Craig here with an appointment as a special municipal employee, which would be a call firefighter. Ryan, you want to explain this to us?
Sure. So Craig approached us. Craig's a member of our DPW, for those who don't know, about serving a volunteer basis as a call firefighter. Of course, we would want to do that. We have a need for as many call firefighters as we can get to try and fill some shifts. Craig's was a little bit more complicated because he is an employee of the town, so wanted to make sure we vetted that out. Also spoke extensively with Chief Hayes about what this would look like. So summarize, and I can get it into as much detail as the board wants.
We've done this before. No. You keep going. I'm just saying. Yeah.
For in this particular case, you would designate a special municipal employee. The reason for this is to mitigate any conflicts of interest. So you're saying your full-time employee will engage in full-time employment work and not use another position as a conflict of interest. It's a little less applicable here, but still matters. So we'd have to sign a disclosure form. The board would need to appoint as a special municipal employee, and then something extra in this particular case, Craig would get a blended pay rate anytime he served above 40 hours a week, which is something we were vetting with legal. So anybody who works more than 40 hours a week is eligible for overtime pay. So the blended rate would be, it's a formula that takes into account the call firefighter wage and the full-time DPW wage to create a mixed wage, which does not seem to be an issue with the fire department or with Craig. So they're fully recommending that this appointment be made.
If I could ask a question?
Sure.
Because his primary job is the DPW.
Correct.
So what happens if there's a call while he's working as a DPW guy?
So I'll let you address this too if you want, but from my recommendation side, I sat with Chief Hayes and Travis to go over what that would look like, and then I sat with Craig and was satisfied in both conversations. So essentially, would only be able to leave his post as a DPW worker for items that would be of significance in the town, a structure fire, a mass
Where they need
casualty.
the extra.
Correct. Travis said, of course, he would release an asset to help in that way, because that greatly enhances our chances of being successful in that event. In terms of preparedness, it's also a concern. Got to be on call for plowing, for other DPW type emergencies, and while on call. And I feel comfortable that Craig understands that his primary position is with the DPW, and he'll be ready for service. In those one or two instances where he might respond as a call firefighter and there's some conflict, Travis and I talked about, that's in the best interest of the town. As long as we're having clear communication about it, there shouldn't be an issue.
Are we full, do we have a full boat for the DPW now? Or are we short-handed?
So
Counting him, right?
as we are appropriated, we are fully staffed.
And how about the firefighters?
Full-time firefighters are.
So
We
this
need more call
This
firefighters.
would give us extra. Okay, thank
We badly need more call firefighters.
you.
Chief actually did this himself a few years ago, where he wanted to take some shifts somewhere else. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but anyway, that was even a little bit more complicated, right? Because he was chief, and so there was a delegation of authority beyond that. Which brings me to my question here too: is that I know that when Travis is gone, sometimes there's a delegation of authority. I don't exactly how that works, but you know, in the event that you were sort of foreman or leading the crew, there'd have to be, I guess, something in place similar to as if you were sick, right? In the event that you had to leave, there's a clear way where the path of communication to who's sort of running the show would be obvious. Do you know how to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't foresee it being a problem. I mean, the chance of that happening is very
Remote?
small.
Okay.
And, you know, I think best judgment all around would be used in that case.
Okay. And is this
Craig's always shown that judgment, so I'd
Yeah.
be fully comfortable working with him in any type of that
Oh yeah,
situation.
no. And as far as the term on this, what is the term?
I believe it'd be appointed annually,
So this would go until we do it again,
and then
July 1st or whatever. We'd sort of go
6
through that
months
way.
or something.
Craig would show up on the list of annual appointments.
Cool.
And at that time, if we had to address his special municipal status, we would.
Okay. Is there anything you want to address with us about this, or is it pretty self-explanatory?
Pretty self-explanatory.
Okay. And
Make a motion?
yeah, I guess real quick. Anyone else have anything at the table they want to ask about this?
Okay, I'll make a motion, to appoint as a special municipal employee, Craig Wassano
It's poison.
as a call firefighter.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes,
Yes.
Aye.
thank you.
Thanks a lot for doing this. Okay. Well, moving on. We'll get to our new business, which is 4A, which is the fiscal year 19 audit review.
Unless you want to jump, Lori.
5 minutes.
Okay.
That's fine.
5 minutes.
Sorry, Jeff.
Not even
Sounds good. Sorry about
5
that.
minutes. So I'm here,
Who are you?
Lori Reed, town clerk.
Hi, Lori.
Hi. So I'm here for the election warrant to be signed, but I figured I would come in person at something I could have left just because I wanted to go over early voting, new voting machine, poll pads, and things like that.
Yeah.
So early voting, the election is going to be the presidential primary. It's going to be held on March 3rd. Polling hours are going to be from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the gymnasium as normal. We're going to be holding early voting in the office on the 24th to the 27th, so Monday through Thursday, and all of this is going to be posted online. The 24th will be 9 to 6, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday will be 8 to 4.
In your office?
So normal business hours, yes, over in the library basement. Deadline to register to vote for the March 3rd election is February 12th, which is next Wednesday. I'm going to be here until 8 p.m. So if anybody wants to come in and register, any registrations received after that date and time, they are not eligible to vote in this election. They would go to the town election. So the presidential primary, again, I said, is on March 3rd. We will have the current voting machine that everybody has seen. Just due to time constraints, you need 45 days to implement a new machine. So because of the transition and the deadlines, I'm not able to do it until town meeting, which I think will be good because it's the first time people are going to see the machine. They'll be familiar with it on a smaller scale, and then that will be the new machine going forward.
What's it like? Is it like digital?
It's really nice. So I went with from ES&S to DS200. So it has a larger display. I've talked to other town clerks and mentoring groups and things like that with Joyce, with the companies. It's very fast and it doesn't like jam. There's no jamming. So if things are fed through, if they're fed through wrong, if they're crinkled or whatever it may be, they haven't had issues with that, and they did with another one.
Do you still sort of feed your own through it and all that?
Yep. That you would go up and feed it. If something comes up, it would pop up on the screen. It doesn't give any personal information, so
Who
you
you
don't have to
voted for?
worry
No.
about that. Right. It's not like, okay, you voted for this person. Sorry, we're kicking it out. So it's just if you overvote or things like that, and that's something that we would obviously assist with.
There's no internet connection, is there?
No. Poll pads are a little bit different. They do have an internet connection, but they run off. They don't need an actual Wi-Fi to run. It's all in the base of the system. Poll pad was something else I was able to add just because of the grant funding. This year it's a little bit different. I'm only going to have one voting machine with one rental because of the amount of money that I had. The new voting machine is about $5,700, I think it was. And then the rental was much cheaper. So the rental will be used as a backup in case something were to happen. Poll pad is about $1,700. What that is it's an easy way for voters to check in. I can't check them in at the presidential. It's not certified in the state of Massachusetts yet to do check-in for counting, but it can be used for early voting, and it can be used for town meeting. So the first time you're going to see that is at town meeting, and early voting if people come in to early vote. So it's a little machine here, and again, I'm going to send out some information on it. But what it is you actually type the voter's last three initials of their name, and I believe it's the first initial of their first name, and it pulls them up and checks them in. So if somebody were to make an error and check in the wrong box, this will prevent that from happening.
Do people get assistance with it, or?
Yeah, so we would actually be doing it.
Okay.
We would type it in and we would show it. If you the faster way to do it too is you can scan your driver's license. This is a concern, or it may be a concern for people of any information might be captured of their driver's license. Nothing is captured, and I do again have a flyer for that. So you'll see this for early voting, and like I said, the new voting machine you won't see until town meeting.
Is an ID required?
An ID is not required, no. But if you walked up to it, it's a little barcode, you just take it. We don't even take your driver's license. You scan it yourself. It will show your name up on the screen. We hit check in. You can go and vote, and then you leave. So that makes it easy. Again, like I said, just for town meeting, and I don't think I can use it for town election. I'll have to find that out. But early voting, nevertheless. So that's that. Any questions?
Have there? I think it sounds great, but not everybody likes change.
Right.
Do you know if have there been any, like in other municipalities, any sort of drop in the amount of people voting? Is that a thing?
No.
Because people are afraid that the man is.
Right. So new voting machine you guys need desperately.
Yeah.
The parts for this one is obsolete or getting obsolete. They still have them. Joyce just didn't want to do it before she left because she wanted the person coming in to pick the machine that they wanted. Okay. There were really only two choices. I did see them both. We touched them both. We played with them both. Election workers were there. We tested different ballots. And this was a general consensus from all of us to go with this machine. And again, by the feedback received from other town clerks. The poll pads, I mean, that would be the only thing of scanning a driver's license again, but all it is it's going into the voter registration system anyway. So when we register to vote, instead of doing it this way, we actually go in and manually, and I have to click each person that votes. This would capture all of that automatically. So it just saves time in the office. It makes it more efficient and obviously error-free.
Will this be explained to the people?
So it will.
Before they actually have to come to vote,
So,
or
early voting, the poll pad
I'm
will
thinking
be
of
present.
the elderly. No,
Right, the poll pad will be present at early voting. What I'd like to do is between March and June at the first town election, I'd like to do like an open house, show both of the products a little bit better so people are aware of them. I won't have time between now and early voting to show that because it won't actually be in until right before early voting, just because of when it was ordered.
once you get there, thinking ahead again, because I was mainly asking that, thinking in terms of the seniors.
Yep.
Would there be time to do a presentation or to the seniors themselves?
Yeah, well, that's what I
'Cause
mean,
would
like,
think
have
some
a,
of them might balk at, as Dan said, change, number one, plus something technical like that and so on. Yeah.
So I worried about that even with the election workers, and I have, I'm not saying she's old by any means. She's the youngest person at her age that I know is Marcia, and Marcia's one of the election workers that checks in, and I talked to her about the poll pad because that's, concern is you have the election workers, they know what they're doing, they've been doing it for years, it's been that certain way, and Marcia was fully on board with the poll pad, thinking, wow, that's great, it's so much easier, it's going to save time, it's going to be wonderful. If anybody's come in for early voting, they know that they have to fill out those forms with all of your information on it. That's time consuming. The poll pad will actually take your information, it will print it out all on a printed label, which I purchase with machine, and all you'll do is stick the label on the envelope, so it will save time as well from writing stuff down.
Is poll pad going to be the exclusive way
To check in.
to check in, or are you still going to have folks at the desk with the book?
So we'll still have the book because right now I have one poll pad. Eventually, we can switch. Again, it makes it easier. It uploads that data into the system without me manually having to do it.
Okay.
Either way, it captures that same information.
So anybody apprehensive about the technology can
Right.
do it the old
And
way.
again, it's not approved for certain things at this time in the state of Massachusetts because they're running it through. So it's not something that, like I said, you can have at, say, check-in for the presidential election or the presidential primary. You're still going to see books at those points.
Okay.
The only one it's approved for at this time is town meeting. So it's not something that's mandatory now at town meeting and, like I said, the early voting.
Good.
All right.
Quickly, there's 4 elections this year.
Yes.
It's a big year in the town clerk world.
So don't cringe when you see my budget.
Lori's been going to a lot of extra trainings, and professional development. The regular professional development is primarily focused on elections. We're actually going together to election training on Thursday, so we can both understand it. Just want to let the community know that we are fully tracking the extra elections this year and investing time into making sure that they run smoothly.
I went to a mentoring group 2 weeks ago in North Row strictly for elections. I'm going this Wednesday with the state. They have one in the morning, Thursday all day, and then Friday on my day off I'm still going in for another one. I figure any information I can get is great.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
So these are my warrants. I just need a signature on all. There are 6 copies there. Your names are printed on the left-hand side, just on the line above it, and that will be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Want to pass them to me, too?
I was gonna give them to y'all at once.
So these election warrants are posted, just so you know, they're posted at various places within the town, by state law, so that's why there's quite a few copies.
Is there talk of going to photo IDs or
No.
required? No.
Not that I've heard. I'll let you know next week. In case I change anything.
Where's that training? Thursday.
Devon's, this one's in Devon's.
At Mass Development?
Conference Center.
The Commons, just outside the base.
Yeah, that's what that is. Andrews Parkway, maybe?
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for your patience.
Oh, no problem.
All right, so we are on to the next item. Ryan, do you want to start us off?
So, yes, please. The financial audit is something we complete every year. It goes through in detail our finances, provides a third-party audit to everything we do financial in the town. We use Scanlon Associates. Jeff is here from Scanlon Associates. This year, the big change was we moved the audit to the beginning of the year. You'll see why. We just believe that the finance team believes it helps us implement changes faster rather than waiting to the end of a year and being almost 2 years behind. It helps us make course corrections a little bit sooner, so we're going to be following that schedule and have agreed to have Scanlon Associates do our audit again next year, to have some continuity, especially changing our accounting services and making sure we go year to year. Turn it over to Jeff.
Okay, so, yeah, please.
My name's Jeff Gendron. Like Ryan said, I work for Scanlon Associates. I was the audit manager for the 2019 audit, which you have the report, and you also have, so this is the financial statements is the large report, and you got the management letter, which is the smaller report, so you have both reports in front of you. Just to give you a little bit introduction of what we do, typically there's, 4 of us for a week, give or take. We come in, we sit down here at this table, which is a lot bigger than most places where used to. I usually sit right over there for the week, and we go through, we look at all your financial statements. And this year we had the benefit with Eric's office. He sent a lot of reports electronically to us that we got before we even stepped foot in the building. So we had a lot of research we did. So we kind of analyzed the reports, compared certain things from last year to this year. And we take what's called a risk-based approach. So we kind of take a look at your financials and what are your biggest risks. You know, what do you have? Your biggest assets you have is your real estate and tax receivables that the tax collector handles, and then your treasurer, where all your cash and investments are. So those are, two of the main departments we're always going to focus on because of this, the amount of transactions and the large amount of holdings they have. And then we take a look at some of the other departments too. This year, I believe we looked at the police off-duty account in detail. We looked at the highway department for the Chapter 90, the roads program. And those are some of the other departments that we, focused on. And we hand out to all the financial team, we hand out internal control questionnaires, basically asking them how do they do their job, what procedures and policies do they have in place. We review those with the employees, take a look and test those as we go. I was going to say, so if we get to the reports, the first one's the financial statements, 53 pages. The first thing to really look at is page 3, is where we give the opinion on the financial statements as a whole. And at the bottom of page 3, where it says opinions, the town received an unqualified opinion, which is the best opinion you can have. It's basically a clean opinion, which says that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. So that's the best opinion you can have. Tom likes to call it the gold standard.
Remind us last year what we had.
And that was the same, same last year. So I know I've been doing this presentation for 3 years, I think, and every year you guys have had, unqualified opinion, which is the best you can have. So from there, the next part go to page 13 and 14, which are your entity-wide statements.
In that, sorry, can I just confirm? So,
Yeah.
so in that opinion, in the event of deficiencies and sort of material weaknesses, or what's it
Correct.
called?
Yeah.
That would all be outlined in
Yeah.
that opinion area. Is that sort of where the main focus of those are?
If there was, material misstatements, or if there's
Misstatements,
anything we had to qualify the opinion to say, your financial statements are good except for this, that's where that
That's
would
where it
go.
goes, okay.
It would go in that. Or, there's adverse opinion where we say, well, the financial statements, we can't even give an opinion because there's not enough in here. We couldn't find enough material to support the numbers in these. That's, another opinion that you wouldn't want to have, which you guys haven't had.
Does that happen fairly
It
often?
does happen, not often in our clients at least, and that I've come across. So page 13 is, like I said, the entity-wide statement. So it's full accrual. It's just almost like a business statement. The statements that a business would issue. So it's got long-term assets, long-term liabilities, like your debt's on there, your capital assets are on there. So, and the only major thing to highlight is at the bottom of where it says net position, go all the way down, there's a number and it says unrestricted. If you notice, the unrestricted has brackets around it, which means it's in the negative, which is never a good thing whenever you have a fund balance or equity that's in the negative. And it's really driven by the net pension liability, where if you go up a little bit into the liabilities, a little bit up, Ryan, if you could, actually it is right there. Under liabilities, non-current, the $4,004,164,808, and that's your share of the Worcester County retirement amount that's not funded. So it's basically your retirement assessment that you pay every year. You keep paying that because there's not been enough money set aside, and all cities and towns in Massachusetts are in the same boat. That's everybody's
insane.
unfunded. Yeah. So
All the ones that belong to that.
because everyone's
Not
has
everyone.
a pension. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not only in Worcester County, everywhere else, within the state. I don't want to say everywhere, but
Yeah.
majority of all the cities and towns. Luckily in Massachusetts, you're governed that Mass General Law says you have to contribute to it. There's other states, that they don't even contribute, and they just pay as you go. So they're not paying that extra amount like we are. So their liability is theoretically much higher than, than yours at this time. So, I just wanted to point that out, and that's the only thing that's really driving that. And then, as you're reading these, I know you maybe just looked at these today for the first time, or, if you have questions, you can feel free to contact Ryan, and either myself or Tom, would answer any questions you have, after this meeting.
Just on the pension liability, so what the driving force of what's raising that is when you have your higher salaried employees, when they retire, their retirement is based on their highest pay of the 3 years. I believe it's 80% of the highest, their best 3 years. And then so when someone retires, then our assessment goes up. And the more
Yes.
retirees that we have.
And part of it was, we started behind on this because we're originally doing pay as you go. So no one was paying anything until people retired. Then all of a sudden you had this big expense. Whereas now that's what Mass General Law 32B, not 32B, the retirement section is telling you. Okay, we're going to start funding this now. You have to fund this liability. So in the meantime, now you're putting more than just what you incurred that year. You're putting some aside for that future payment.
Okay.
Yeah, that people are earning, like Ryan's earning a retirement now, but he's not going to receive it till he retires. So now you guys are putting aside money for when Ryan does retire, it's not a big hit. You've already got some sitting there. So that's where it really started.
Okay, and I guess it's our assessment then, also that.
So,
And then if someone's on disability also.
so we can break it down for you, but the assessment includes this pension liability over time. Their target, I would have to look at it in detail, but it's approximately 30 years they're trying to pay it off. So our assessment includes a large chunk of trying to pay down this liability, as Worcester Regional generally. We only pay our share, of course, but that's what's adding to the assessments. When it comes off, in theory, the assessments would drop. I have my opinions on that, but that is the idea.
Now, can you just let us know a little bit how, what you do? So I guess first off, how we do as a town, and then what you do, how that may or may not affect our bond rating.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to hold off a little bit, I'll get to that.
Sounds
You
good.
can wait
I can.
a couple minutes, and so the 13-14 page, that was the entity-wide, and then if we get to page 15 and 16, that's the governmental statements, and that's more what you're used to when you set your budget. That's your current. So that's basically, we're not doing anything long term here. That's your current financial statements, and from here, there's a couple things to notice, and this will get into the bond rating right now. So your free cash at the end of the year was $620,000, and your other reserve that you really have that's unallocated or is your stabilization fund was $560,000. So your free cash of $600 plus your stabilization of $560 gives you about $1.1 million in unallocated reserves that you have. So one of the things the bond rating, when they look at it, they compare your unallocated reserves and compare that to your annual budget. So if you go to page 19, and if you, yeah, so page 19, if you go down a little bit more where the expenditures, your original budget is going to be, yeah, right there, Ryan, perfect. So that middle, second column, sorry, is 9.2 million is your original budget, approximately, and you have about $1.1 million in reserve, so that gets you to about 12% of, your original budget. You have reserves to cover that. And the bond rating is looking for anything around 10% or more is, the standard that they're looking for out of a city or town to have to be, in good standing. So you guys are, above that, and you have some wiggle room, which is good too. So then if you do come into the, something happens where you do have an issue, you run into a revenue deficit, or you have a large expense, you can kind of weather the storm for a year or two, and while you make a plan going forward. So,
We better get right to it.
yeah.
It's coming in.
Yeah. So then this page 19, we can stay on that, and that's your your budget, and then you have your revenues above it is how you you paid for the year. But that's really how your free cash is generated. And this is what we call budget versus actual, or it's called non-GAAP budget and actual general fund. And this is really what you guys are doing here. When you set your budget, you came up with that budget of 9.2. The next column to the right is your final budget. So originally what you passed, you might have had some revisions, reserve fund transfers, different things like that throughout the year. You guys voted to move money, and it didn't really change much. It went from 9.2 to 9.3. But then next you have the actual budgetary amounts, which is that fourth column where on the expense side it says 8.556 right there. So that's saying that you budgeted you were going to spend 9.3, you actually spent 8.8, and you had some monies that you had to encumber because you had invoices or that were kind of outstanding at June and you didn't pay them till the next fiscal year, say in July. It was like a timing issue, and that shows that you have 281,000 to the good on your expenditure variance.
So the amounts carried forward are the encumbrances?
Correct. And that'll carry forward to next year, and you can spend them in next year as long as you have something to back up that carry forward, like a purchase order, or it's an article, say, that you're going to continue to do if you're going to buy voting machines. And you just, Lori had a PO, but she didn't get it yet till, she just didn't purchase it till July.
Yep.
For whatever reason. So, and this page kind of tells you how your free cash was generated. So at the end of the year, you had 620,000 free cash, which we said, coupled with your stabilization, was good. But the 620,000 that you had in free cash, it came from 70,000 from the prior year that you didn't vote. So you had about 400,000 last year in free cash. You voted out about 100,000 to your operating budget, I think was about, and you voted 230,000 for capital items, which is good because that's what you want to do with your free cash. You want to purchase, your long-term items that you need.
Do we, and this is sort of a dual question here. Obviously, this is our year end, but do we do an encumbrance and sort of semi-annual evaluation as well? Sort of see with that level of detail where we're at mid-year?
Yes.
Quarterly too, or is that just mid-year?
So the encumbrance for the expenditure side is tightly controlled.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't encumber for a capital project. It would be for something in the operating budget. So
Okay.
I bought a computer. They gave me a receipt, but we didn't pay it yet. So of that or if we use this year, we've already expended 99% of any encumbered dollars.
Yep.
So there's almost nothing left. And that's an every year thing because you have to pay those end of year bills. Legal bills come to mind. A lot of stuff with highway, just bills that we know they're coming, and it's something we do every year. So quarterly check-ins is the quarterly reports that we give you, and the one that's coming next is how I track this and go through it, and the finance team goes through it monthly.
Thanks.
Not to an audit level detail, but
Yeah,
based on their
I figured that.
recommendations, we do in our policy guide book, we do that level of investigation. I think quickly identify some issues we have and we address it,
Okay.
if we have any.
Yeah, so you had the 620,000 free cash. You had 70,000 from last year that you didn't vote. And then if you look at this schedule, basically, you have 300,000 in revenue, positive variance, and you had 280 in expenditures. So that coupled with the 70 from last year gets you to around your 600,000. And then the important, kind of thing to look at this is that if you go up right a little bit more just to see the revenue from the top. So of the revenue, 304,000, you notice not one category. So it's broken down into categories: property taxes, intergovernmental, which is your receipts from the state, excise taxes, etc. Not one number of the 304 is like 250,000 or 200,000. So it really wasn't made up from like a one-time revenue source or anything like that. So it was evenly spread. So that's another thing, like we were talking about on the expenditures. It's saying that your budgeting is working. So you budgeted 9 million in revenue, you received 9.3, and it was evenly spread out. So there wasn't any one item that really skewed the numbers. So that's that tells you that your budgeting process is working. The same exact thing can be said on the expenditures. Once again, the same thing. That $280,000 variance, if you go down just a little bit more to see the subtotal, the largest one is 80,000 on general government.
And so that we've also been sort of appropriately conservative, I think, right? Because any of those things, and evenly conservative, I guess, across the board, right? Without any sort of big risk in any which way.
Yes, tightly controlled on expenditures, and we've been preaching and working at what we call backing off revenue to create some room. There's just one caveat on that 300,000. If I was to give you a number, it would be 200,000
Yeah.
because we did have the one solar permit, which wouldn't show up at an audit level. They're not looking that deep, but I know and you know that we
You can
had
see it
solar
right here, I
permit.
mean, it comes out pretty clear, license permits and fees, 96,000,
So 200,000 of approximately 1.3 million is around 93%, which is what we were trying to target, saying we want our revenues projected at 93% of what they're going to be, just in case they come down. Now it worked out. Not every year, that magic doesn't always happen, but that's what we're trying to do with our policy approach.
And then the only other thing I really have is the collection rate this past year was 97% on the current year's real estate, which is extremely high. So that's good. So that means basically every $100 in real estate bills you sent out, you collected 97. And then that's excellent. So, and then that's all I was gonna say on the financials. If you guys have any questions, I'll.
Do you do a or I guess it's in here and I don't know where, or if do we have like the last couple of years what that percent was? Was it right around 96, 97, same sort of thing?
Right there.
Right there. So, okay, that was it.
Since Sandy's been here, it's been right around 97.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I remember last year was about 96 to 97. That much I know, but.
Okay.
And then the small reports, the management letter, and thing to notice in here is that it starts off with current year's comments and recommendations, other matters. So the definitions of all the material weakness and significant deficiencies are on page 3. And we didn't have any of those here, so it's kind of saying those are red flags, those are major issues. If we had those, they'd be spelled out right on page 3. It'd say we found this material weakness, and this is what that could cause. We didn't have any of those. These are more just recommendations that we're making, so that the town can, strengthen their controls and policies and procedures. So on page 4, the first one is the cash and investment reconciliation procedures. This is kind of similar. We kind of had this last year, but I kept it as a current year just to kind of focus on. I updated it to the amounts, the newer amounts, and changed around a little bit. And one of the things we did this year, which I thought was pretty good, is I came out here a day, I think it was the beginning of January, because I hadn't met the accountant yet. So I came out to meet the accountant and the treasurer, and Ryan sat in, and we kind of went over the management report. So I kind of got that update of what you're actually doing now on some of these items. And we talked about, some recommendations to get them changes implemented to correct these, which is something we don't always have a chance to do. So sometimes I just come here, I read them, and then, Ryan may have an update, but I'm not aware of it. Well, with this, like in this item 1 especially, I got to see what the accountant and treasurer have already done, and they've implemented a new cash book. And I saw what the accountant, what her variance was, and it was very similar to what I had as of June 30th. So I was, very confident that, everything's working right as of like July of 19 and August of 19 they've done.
If it had been listed before, it's pretty clear he's gonna deal with it.
Yeah, so it looks like the progress was made on that one going forward. And then the second one's a health insurance expenditure. And that's with you guys belong to the Quabbin Regional School District Plan, and there was an issue with one invoice we found. And then when we looked further, we found that the whole system, the way the billing and paying on that was being done was, it was like you were self-creating your own bill. Basically, Sandy was saying, well, this is what we should be paying you, instead of them sending her a bill and her double checking it. So there was no check on what she was giving them. So if she made a mistake, like she did on this one bill, it was kind of a unique circumstance, but they should have caught it on their end and said to you like, hey, there's an issue, and they never did. So I know you had called over there at the time.
Yeah, so just we were backing into the right number, so we want to be more proactive. So Quabbin now sends us an itemized invoice, which just wasn't happening, and we pay that invoice. It's that simple. Before we were saying, here's our employees, here's what we know our cost share is, and we sent them that amount. So it gives us more feedback if we have the actual bill and we can catch if they made a mistake. They can catch if we can make a mistake.
This is the overpayment one, is that what it's?
Yeah,
it's
so you
talking
guys,
about?
I
That
think,
was in
yeah.
June, so she
Mhm.
overpaid, double paid a bill, and that's what caught this this procedure. So we fixed it.
And then on page 5, we talk about the capital assets. And I talked with the new accountant, and I sent her a sample that we have from other communities. And she was gonna look into updating it, or I'm not sure what the status on that one is.
So we have a list of the assets.
Mhm.
We just haven't calculated depreciation
Okay.
because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that we're not gonna do it, but that's the next step, is we have to calculate depreciation and carry that over year to year.
And then the last thing is just these other areas, which were smaller items and things just like the implementation of future GASB statements, just new GASB standards that come out. Most of them are not material or don't affect the town. I think the biggest one coming out is leases, and I don't think you guys have any long-term capital leases at the time. And the only other one was the police off-duty record keeping. When one of the guys was testing the police off duty, he went over there. I think he made a list there, so the records are available to get an outstanding list, but they also have software that they weren't utilizing, and I think you guys had a meeting.
So accounting met with police to, I don't use accounting terms, but to double
Yeah.
track it. So each office is aware and they can reconcile, so that, this is details, that's what off-duty record keeping is, so that the details are tracked appropriately and both sides recognize what the other's doing. Because with details, they sort of invoice the town. It's a little bit different than when we pay the bills.
With police details,
Yes.
and whether or not, does that matter whether or not it's municipal work or whether or not it's through some project or whatnot, or is that
No,
all
it's
sort of
just-
go through the same way?
It all comes through us, so we
Yeah.
just have to make sure we're accounting for it properly.
Okay.
Because we have to we pay them, and then we have to get the money from the contractors or wherever we're supposed to come from.
So it's kind of a pass-through in some cases, but we need to make sure that we're tracking what we're supposed to, and, common problem, but we're addressing it.
Hey, sorry, this is a little bit off topic, but I do a lot of that, and lots of municipalities charge a handling fee, like a 10% sort of thing. Do we?
Not this time.
The admin fee?
Admin fee, like on
Yeah.
top of the detail.
Yeah,
like
I
the
believe-
10%.
Do we add it?
Yeah, I believe
I'll
you
look
charge.
into it.
I think it
Okay.
goes to the general fund, so you may not see it. It's not going to the same account, but yeah, it should be in the general fund revenue. I don't know if it's buried in with other police receipts. I'd have to look
wondering.
at it, but yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I'll get an answer on it.
And then, so yeah, so that's the management letter. Like I said, overall, pretty good, I think. Especially when you consider that the follow-up's being done. That's kind of what I look for as being the most important thing. That, that they're taking steps to make improvements, so.
Okay, how about, so I've got a question for you about, I guess, how do you feel about our town in the event of, their, and means nothing obviously towards what we're actually dealing with, but it's important because there can be turnover in small towns like ours, from financial departments to administration to whatever else. I guess, do you feel like we're in a pretty good position to be able to handle a significant turnover in the event that it happened, just based on the sort of groundwork that we've laid?
Well, I mean, your financial team is solid now that you have, with Sandy. I don't know about the accountant yet, because we haven't looked at her financial statements or anything like that yet, so we'd wait maybe for a year or
Okay.
two under her belt. But it's nice that, treasurers are working, really good with Ryan, the treasurer, they're, the treasurer collector, the assessors. Everyone seems to work really well here. If there's a problem, they're proactive. They don't wait for the problem to happen. So I think, that's, enough can't be said about that, especially in a small town. It's very hard to find.
Okay.
So.
All right, thanks.
I can add to that. So the biggest weakness we have is staff levels, which isn't surprising, but one person does things. So if someone takes a vacation, like Sandy's going on vacation, then we have to scramble for payroll and other procedures. So there's chances for error there. So that's a liability. And cross training is limited because we're all pretty taxed. Not that any of that's surprising you, but that is a liability. In terms of turnover, you're your biggest asset is your treasurer investing in that position, and that accounting relationship. If that can stay solid, you can weather anything. If both of them win at the same time, a town this size, my opinion, would be in trouble.
Which is even more important for us to make sure that we're assessing our competitive, competitors, which would be necessarily other towns, and the STEP program that we're on, as far as what we're paying and all that sort of stuff, becomes even more important when it comes to things like that.
And it's all connected, so it's just
Right.
important for decision making. But some of the unfunded liabilities, one thing we don't have is OPEB. We don't have retiree benefits, so we don't take on that liability, which helps us financially. But it also makes it less likely that you would keep a late career employee who wants to retire with health insurance. So it hurts your retention, but helps your finances. If you were to add a retiree health insurance benefit, which some employees do want, it's going to be expensive, but it would help you with retention. So there's always that balance. And then you'd be adding on liabilities, etc. So it's difficult to retain here.
Okay. Anything else from you?
Nope.
Anything else from the table to Jeff?
Nope.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up. Virtual handshake.
Yeah. This time of year, flu season. All right, moving on, we've got the Q2 financial report.
Exciting. It's all math
Yes, spreadsheets. This is item 4B.
So some of the stuff you saw in the audit, how do we control expenses and how do we track revenue? That's what this report does quarterly. Just trying to show you my thinking, the finance team's thinking, and how we're tracking things, and hopefully identifying early problems. So this forces us to address it at least once a quarter, and you should always demand that your staff does this. So items in this report include budget versus actual. This is sent out monthly. This is comparing what's budgeted to what's actually been spent. Accounts under review is those accounts that are over appropriation at this point. I'd like to just give you a report on those when you see them. So this is a half-year report, so all the accounts you'll see in the budget versus actual report, anything over 50%, this memo addresses. Expected deficits, this is stuff we know is going to be over appropriation, which needs to be addressed, and surpluses are things we know will be under appropriation, so potential avenues to pay for things like snow and ice or unexpected expenses.
You wanna just talk about the expected deficits for 2 seconds?
That we know of right now.
Yeah.
Been a lot of stress on the building and maintenance budget, which is the Slade building budget, so we did some projects, secured it with locks, did the ramp because of liability. The seniors, air conditioning went out in the middle of summer, which was a problem. And then we had an electrical issue, so we don't necessarily budget for that level of issue. We've already used a reserve fund transfer, but it's gonna be tight.
Okay.
Another
Accounting?
So we knew that transition was gonna be difficult, so long-term, combining with Templeton, believed was a good choice. And also switching to Vadar, but we knew that was gonna be tricky, and we wanted to make sure the town's finances stay stable, so we asked to invest money in keeping Kinshirf here for 3 months to help transition everybody out. And I think that was successful, but it cost $9,000, which is a good whack on our budget, so we used the reserve fund for that.
Mm-hmm.
Just identified a major weakness that could happen and decided to invest in it not happening, and it hasn't, based off the audit report. Those are the 2 big deficits that we know of right now.
And then the police.
Police
car?
could,
The
the police car, yes,
Yeah.
so, police vehicle maintenance, we had an engine go, as we talked about at our last meeting, engine 2, it was $9,400, we ended up with a $7,600 reserve fund transfer, and the rest of it is stressing the police maintenance budget, which is designed for regular maintenance, not major repairs. So, we used a little bit of reserve money for that. Our reserve, as you can tell, is now pretty tapped, but we think we have enough money budgeted to get to the end of the 6 months. But anytime you stress these budgets, you're generating less free cash, right? Because you're not underspending, which we try to do. So that means the free cash number might not be where we're at. I don't think we're at that level yet, but there's always a give and take with this stuff.
Is it already in the works, the repair, or has it been,
We should have both the new cruiser and the repaired cruiser by the end of next week. So our fleet will be back to a manageable rotation. So the deficits and surpluses, then tracking revenue this year for you. So you can see where we're at with revenue and what we think in terms of, are we gonna hit the number we said we were going to, which is important. Capital projects, these should be tracked centrally, so they're included in this report. What our finance team's been doing and what we're doing to monitor, which is a lot of the stuff that was recommended in the audit. So I'll go through quickly. Some of these we've seen before. I'll skip anything of non-significance, but if you want to talk about it, please stop me. So my professional development budget is over. Expenditure, this is because I use this for both myself and employees, and a lot of the stuff happens at the 6-month mark, so don't expect this to go over. Information technology, we are investing a lot in our software and trying to stretch this IT budget in order to accommodate more of this end-of-life change rather than just rely on the capital budget. So I don't think it's going to go over, but it's going to be really close, and that's okay. We're trying to invest in ourselves. Building maintenance, we talked about. Police personnel, there's a lot of overtime in the winter, and a lot of our stipends are paid halfway. So this is right at the line as it usually is. We're tracking it to make sure that we don't go over while still committing to not endangering our police officers by only having one on shift or trying to cover things in a way that encourages safety. The DPW we talked about, but just to reiterate, they spend a lot of money in the fall and a lot of money in the spring, so at halfway they're still recovering that percentage, so we don't expect this to go over. They do their maintenance seasonally, so it's hard to track it quarterly. Details budget is already wiped out in the DPW. We know that they have to pay for a tremendous amount of details, and it's under budgeted. It is every year. Senior Center Director goes on a little hiatus this time of year, so she works a little bit extra before and after that, so she's a little over right now, but that's not going to be a problem. Good news, Worcester Retirement, we paid it early, so we get a 1% discount, so that's one of the surpluses. And then long-term debt, we pay this twice a year, so we're tracking that one. And liability insurance, we paid almost all up front, so it's 98% expended. Even though it's a big line item, we're not worried about that either. So far we've spent 90. Halfway through the year, we would be right now expending 97.5% of our appropriated funds if you projected it out, which is a somewhat useful exercise. So we can expect somewhere around 100 to 2,000 to 200,000 in return funds, which would be a little bit less than last year. All things held equal. So these are
So a little bit less than last year because we had the 200 plus the 100
yes.
to get to the 300. The 200 plus the 100 from the permit.
That's on the revenue side.
Right.
So we're almost at the same level
right.
of the expenditure side as we were last year.
Alright, got it.
Accounts under review, these are just some of the accounts we talked about already. Nothing new here, but I can certainly explain any of it in any more detail if you want. There are the deficits. We're at a $21,600 deficit, and we have a reserve account of $30,000, so 8.4 left. Last year we barely touched it at all, so sometimes these things are just cyclical and bad luck. Health insurance, we expect to get some money back from this. We always add a little bit to this so we can make sure we take care of our employees mid-year if we have to. You don't want this budget to be too tight because it's super expensive if you're wrong. Dispatch, some grant funding is going to reduce our assessment, so we're going to get some money back there. That 1% I talked about in the regional assessment, Monty Tech came in under what they were expecting, so our surpluses sort of match our deficits. So we're just tracking what we're tracking in the budget.
That surplus probably seems a little conservative too, right?
Always, yeah. I don't want to promise you $1 million and give you 10. The revenue report. So our town accountant has done a tremendous job educating me on revenue and really beefing up our tracking of the revenue report. So we used to report to you in about 12 categories, and now we're tracking about 100. So we can see it at a micro level. You'll see this in the budget process. You've already seen it in the financial forecast, so it's helping me understand in the town by proxy understand how we're bringing revenue and how we should be projecting ourselves so that we can continue to generate that little bit of free cash that pays for our capital. So right now, if you look at the revenue report, we're at 45% of our revenue expectations. that's not a good number. We want to be over 50% at this point. However, the majority of revenue comes in quarter three, or slightly more than half comes in. So I'm not worried about it yet. The biggest being motor vehicle excise. We don't even start taking that in earnest until this time of year.
So this is gonna be annually that happens then, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
We'd still like it to be, we want to be as high as possible without strangling the budget. But, this is the stuff that I think about as I'm going to sleep, so I just want to make sure you're seeing the numbers and what I'm thinking about the numbers. Capital projects, I could list all these for you. Each one is and this is available on the website for anybody that wants to see it. So these are our capital projects and what we have going on. Some of the new things here. We're still working on the exhaust mitigation system for the fire department. The holdup there is in engineering. Just making sure that they're building a spec package that will pass Inspector General review so we can go out for procurement. Just a little bit more complicated than we thought, and a lot of engineering work going on, so we haven't been able to push the engineers as much as we want, but this will get done this year, so we are tracking on that. DPW plow truck is procured and on its way. We should be seeing that soon. The annex roof is complete pending a final inspection, as I reported last time. The cruiser will be delivered within a week or two. Both of the school projects are done. The town computers are being installed as we speak over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We made our first payment on the center school roof feasibility study, so that'll be done soon, and in time for a recommendation at town meeting to replace the center school roof. In CPA, some things to note here: the portable ice rink does not look like it's going to happen this year, which makes me sad. But if I have anything to do with it, it'll help. It'll get done next year because I really wanted to skate at my lunch break. And helping Parks right now to procure the rec field dugouts, so hopefully be doing that this spring. At 20,000, it needs a more significant procurement process. So just making sure we got them state bid information, contractors to do that type of work. So
Is it going to be the same construction as current, like stone masonry, CMU block, or do you know?
That's my understanding. Completely being run by Parks though.
Okay.
The finance team was really busy last quarter. Collected all of our department requests for my budget that we presented to you next month. Developed our revenue projections, which really drive the budget process. Assisting staff still with understanding they're not like a giant overhaul, but some of the processes change with payroll and warrant, making sure we're doing all the things we need to do there. They helped me put together my financial forecast, and we set, of course, the FY20 tax rate, which is no small feat. Financial monitoring. So these are the financial policies that we worked on a lot last year, applied to recommendations like through our audit and also our internal audits. So that cash book reconciliation he was talking about is one of the things we need to target. So the treasurer and the accountant are reconciled to within $600 as of the first of the year. So there's one more payment out there we need to find, but that'll be a matched reconciliation. The reason why that matters to you, if the treasurer and the accountant, they have separate controls. If they're matched, then what we're saying to you is happening, unless you have a material weakness in either one of those employees, which we do not. Payroll withholdings, this was something from last year that we've got a good handle on now. One of the things you heard tonight was the health insurance payments. It's this type of thing. What are we withholding from our employees, and is it accurate? We're making sure that's reconciled. Accounts receivable, we need to focus on this, so we owe you a stronger reconciliation process for receivables. This is stuff that we know is due to us money-wise. We are reconciled through the end of September, with everything else 80% reconciled, which doesn't mean that we have 20% errors, it just means we haven't gone through the materials yet. So expect by the next report this to be fully up to date within 1 month's time, which is our target. Then ambulance receivables, you'll be seeing this again. So the auditors asked us to look into outstanding medical bills that are owed through our biller Comstar. So fire department goes out, they provide services, and then our billing company picks up the process from there. So we have a pretty significant backlog of unpaid ambulance receipts. Some of those can be collected, some of those can't, and then there's going to be some decision points for you on how aggressive to get with the collections process. So some towns are very aggressive, some don't want to be aggressive with their residents. So we're gonna try and clean up that old list, and then there'll be a decision point for some of the list, and then we'll be fully reconciled with that receivables, if that makes
How
sense.
does that process work? Is it in the hands of the fire department? Are they responsible for going after the, or is it
So we pay a billing service to do that for the fire department.
to go after the fees? Oh, okay.
But they have a certain, I call it aggressive level, but a certain threshold that they'll try to, and then that's what they do. And then you can either pass it on to a debt collector or report it. There's other things that we can do there, so I'll be bringing that to the board in a more developed recommendation for what you'd like to do with what's outstanding.
When? About?
We're targeting probably early April. If we could get this cleaned up by the end of the fiscal year, that would be a big win.
What's the number?
It's over 300,000. But we will not collect that. That's not. It's
Is it
impossible. A lot of
mostly-
these are impossible. So
Is it mostly insurance companies or just personal individuals that are not paying?
I'm not at that level of detail yet, and we can't see a lot. I can't see a lot of it because it's protected. So we're working through that as well.
But you would think everybody has to have insurance now, you know? So you would think it would be insurance companies.
Yeah, it sounds. If you just put let's say they get 20% on their collection rate on the 300,000. That's a truck for us. So that sounds great, but there's a reason why these haven't been collected. A lot of the times they're just never going to be.
And there's deductibles and stuff though, who knows how all that works, right?
Yeah.
So the auditors recommended we dig into this, and as soon as we did, we realized there's a lot to it. So we're digging in more and trying to get you a clearer picture of what needs to be done.
Okay.
But I just want to let you know that we're tracking it and trying to meet that fourth quarter target I have for understanding it. Then the rest of the report is the expenditure, budget versus actual. That shows you where we are in terms of how much we said we were going to spend and how much we spent, and then the revenue reports at the end. Those are a fun 50 pages of reading, so I'm not going to flip through them here. On the town accountant website under budget tracking, FY20 budget tracking, you can see every budget versus actual published for each month, and then a by item expenditure line. So any dollar we spend is visible to the public. Who we spent it to. It was one of our initiatives this year to open up the checkbook and make sure everyone can see what we're spending money on. Any questions? That's my quarter two report.
No, I don't have any. Anybody else have any
No.
questions on that?
No.
Alright, well, thanks for the update. Looks like we're pretty well organized when it comes to that. So now we move on to the fiscal year 21 town wage plan approval, which we have a couple of sheets for. One which has the classifications and grades, and then the other with the fiscal year 20 proposed pay plan.
Yes. So this is, by charter, the Human Resources Advisory Board would compile this and present it to you for approval. Short of having a Human Resource Advisory Board, the town administrator does it, and then brings it to you for approval. So we started this last year. We invested $3,000 in a review of our classification and wage plan. So classification means how does each job here compare to other jobs within the town, and then peer towns. So HRS, which is a human resources consulting group, did this classification based off our old one. So this is just how we classify our non-union employees, from our mart van drivers to me.
Did this change?
It did not.
Okay.
There is one change. I'm
Town
sorry.
administrator?
Yes, the town administrator is now fired. So the land use assistant we put with our finance and assessing assistant because of the complexity of the job. So combining 4 departments into one, we
Yeah.
felt that it fit there.
Okay.
It didn't exist on the previous scale. Some things to note here, myself and the police chief are not on, nor is the DPW director or the fire chief. As we've been working to get everybody on a non-union wage plan, those are the positions that are left. I would recommend to you that, because chief and I are contractual, that you would keep it that way. But my recommendation in my town budget will be to put Chief Hayes and Travis onto the wage plan this year. So if you flip to the proposed pay plan, because of our budget problems that you'll hear about later, I am not recommending that this board add a COLA. So non-unions would be taken care of here. They are at a grade and step. They would move to the next step each year, and then if you were to grant them above and beyond the step increase, which is 2%, then you would add a COLA to the scale. If you never add a COLA to this scale, it will be stale in 5 years, and you'll need to make another big readjustment. If you do add a COLA each year, so most towns do, when you hear them say COLA, they have a wage plan, and then they put the COLA on top of it, so the real increases are somewhere between 1 and 5%. That hasn't been done here for years. In fact, a few years there was wage freezes, so part of our goal was to get competitive with our peers within the median 50%, and then at least have that 2% increase pending budget difficulties. And if we wanted to increase the scale overall by say 1-2%, if you wanted to make a across the board adjustment.
I want to just explain the call EMT and call paramedic piece of this.
So we placed call firefighters and paramedics on the scale. I'll show you exactly where they are.
I can't get it.
There's just another thing down there.
Oh, down there.
So call firefighter is B
Yeah, right there.
Thank you.
on the scale. Call fire lieutenant is C. And then we wanted to recognize certifications and professional development. So the pay plan also includes anyone with an EMT certification gets an extra $1.50 an hour, and anyone who's a paramedic gets an extra $4 an hour. So when we took our call firefighters, we mapped them up because it wasn't a controlled process. So we mapped them all out. We made sure that nobody was making less than what they were then, and we placed them all on the scales based off the steps, so that everybody got put onto the scale in a place that was appropriate, or at least as appropriate as we could make it. So now each one they might be a B, but some of the people that have been here for a long time are a B step 12 with an EMT or a paramedic, so that their wages were increased. But now when we hire a new call firefighter, they are placed appropriately based off experience and competitiveness with their peers.
Okay.
So call firefighters are non-union, which some people don't know, as opposed to our full-time firefighters who are union and under collective bargaining agreements. So none of the collective bargaining agreements are on these scales. This is all non-union.
Okay.
So if the board agrees with the recommendation, this would be the FY20 wage plan, and I build my budget based off of this plan.
So we need a motion to approve it?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the FY21 town wage plan as presented.
I'll second it.
Discussion, just a question, I guess, relative to us voting on this, and, future pluses and minuses with the budget that we discuss. How is it, is there any effect?
So the cleanest, if you were to say not do raises, right, because of a budget crisis, the cleanest way to do that would be to pass a wage plan and recognize that that's what it should be, and then to freeze wages. So just vote to freeze wages or direct us to do that in the budget process. As opposed to trying to change the scale to match the budget situation, you should keep the scale. For all intents and purposes, vote to ignore it if you have to.
Okay, that wasn't really my question, but I
I'm sorry,
understand.
then I didn't understand.
No, but understood, okay. Okay, further discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. Alrighty, so we're on to the Country Hen Scholarship. That is item 4E. So this is the annual scholarship with initial contribution from the Country Hen matched by George Bass, or some combination of the two, for $15,000 each to get to $30,000, and then there's a certain amount of money based on what the annual return is of the investment to be able to spend on scholarships for Quabbin kids, or Hubbardston born, right? I think that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to just
So this is, I think, one of the cooler things the board gets to do. Just putting it on your radar. It's coming up soon, so
We did about 2, right? Last year?
if you wanted to give us a timeline and process, we'll execute it. So when you want to bring up the scholarship and start advertising it, I know we've had some difficulty, so I just wanted to keep it on our radar.
I'd say right away. So what we've done the last couple of years is we've had, I think there's been 5 of us. It's been, and I've been doing it for a few years, and Jeff has too. So it's been 2 board members, it's been 2 2 school committee members, and then a member from the Country Hen. So there's been 5 of us who have received all of the applications, and then, you know, without speaking to each other, sort of made our, you know, vote, whether it was 1 or 2 or however many, and sent them to one party, kind of like the compiler. Won't be you, but you know what I mean. To be able, basically, you know, get all the results and then say who was the successful one on it. So it's worked great. I don't know if anyone else. I mean, it's been sort of a pleasure to go through it. If you guys are interested in being on that, I don't mind, you know, not being on it. If one of you guys would like to do it, it's up to you guys. No,
That's all right,
it?
the way you guys been
We'll
doing
keep
it
it the way.
sounds good.
Yeah, Chris, you good?
You can continue.
Sounds good. You want to stay? We'll stay on it. All right. So it'll still be Jeff and I from the select board, and then we can, I guess, ask the school committee 2 members that they want. It doesn't matter to us if they want to keep it the way it was, or I can't remember exactly who it was last year. And then the Country Hen with a single vote in there. And it sounds to me like we should advertise probably through Jess Bennett. You know, I guess, well, ASAP.
Okay.
And deadline wise, I think we usually move it. Last year we ended up getting a bunch at the end. I don't know if you
Yeah, we
recall. We
did.
ended up having like 9 or something, and there were some really strong
They were
candidates. It was
all
hard.
good, yeah, they were very good.
But we don't always. Well, I guess we'll have to find out. Do you know if it's if it's 1,000 this year or 2,000 or 1,500? I can't remember.
I don't.
Okay, so sometimes we have 2,500 or 2,000 or 1,000 or whatever. But if we can find that out as well. But
I think we went, because of that amount, when you mentioned 500, I
we
think
split it last year.
we decided not to, I thought. just
That was 2
because
years ago.
500
Last year, I remember we
doesn't
had
really
2.
get you much.
But we had 2 of them in
today.
here last year anyway.
Yeah.
Though I know we
Yeah.
had 2 in here last
Yeah,
year.
we did. Okay.
But anyway, so I guess some of those details. But I guess for a deadline, I guess if you don't mind just asking Jess what makes sense.
Okay.
It's probably, you know, my guess is first week of May or something like that is what she's gonna say,
And
based
Bob-
on when graduation.
And
and all
Bob
that is.
presented them.
That's right.
Bob came and presented them to the kids.
So it's funded by the interest of the account,
Yes.
and that must have a bearing on the amount.
Yep.
Okay.
Not to overplug, but that is included in the budget tracking, so you can see how much is in the scholarship funds.
Oh, okay, cool.
What's the line item number? No,
If Kelly would know that right off the top of her head,
that's all right.
she would just fire it at you, and you'd be like, "Oh."
All right, so we're on to old business now. We've got the host community agreement review, potential finalization with Royalston Farm LLC, Paper Crane Provisions LLC, Paper Crane Provisions Inc. And for all those new to this, that is the agreements that were discussed at the last meeting relative to the marijuana grow facilities to be proposed in town. So.
So, in talking to Damon, who seems to be representing this group in council, the board could instruct me to enter into negotiations based off the conversations we had last time and bring you a final product, or I could have town council create what would be our negotiations and bring that to you for discussion. Not to overcomplicate it, there's not much that's going to change except for those decision points that we had, which
You're
I-
talking about the host
Yes.
community application.
Decision points being how much of a community impact fee, do you wanna add, say, scholarship money or DRA money, making sure the legal costs are in there, and then I have council looking into whether or not we can bond their performance and the minimums, et cetera. So if you'd like to see a copy of that before we sign it, we would do that at March 3rd, or you can instruct me to negotiate based off that and bring you would still have a final approval, that process. So I'm just trying to timeline it and see if we can move it along.
I thought we said that last week, is that we were acting on the wish of the community and gave our sort of 2 cents on the agreements and wanted to defer to council a few things you had written down for us, and that, things were moving forward, so,
There was a 20,000 something plus figure that I'm remembering, and I'm trying to, at which point, I think you said something, as a town, you can ask for whatever you want, but
Yeah.
there is a limit too, before you get some, they might walk away from it in that sense, so, do you remember what that figure was for, that?
It's the idea that you can ask for anything, but right now what's allowed under state law is 3% for a community impact fee. So there's arguments on
Oh,
both
that's it,
sides.
the
whether
community impact, yeah, okay.
if you add anything to the 3%, does that cut into the 3%? Will it eventually be deemed to be above and beyond that
Yeah.
state regulation?
Okay.
So my recommendation was that you get what you want and make sure it matches the community, but anything crazy is just going to be knocked out of the park anyway. So.
Thank you, I feel better.
Alright, so what do you need, I thought we already gave the
And I just
direction on
wanted,
this.
I wanted to make sure that the marijuana stuff is discussed fully in public. If you would like me to actually negotiate with them and bring you a product that you can approve,
I think we're there.
Yep,
okay, let's do that then.
get it moving.
So I will send, once council finishes our version of the draft to them and start negotiating, and if there's a decision point, it'll be brought back for public discussion. None of this is an executive session, it's all above board and in line with our peer communities who also have these HCA's.
Okay. Alright, now we put TA evaluation on this,
Just in case.
just in case, so we've got some evaluations to do, which, I, a few days ago, sent out the sort of the blank
The blank
template,
form, yeah.
that we've used in previous years, and originally we were gonna sort of rush to it, but Ryan's gonna do a self-review that he's gonna get to us as well, and there was no reason to rush it, so
Oh.
basically I sent an email to everybody and just said, let's just push it off until
So there's no rush on doing the forms then?
That's right.
Okay, yeah, alright,
until our March meeting, so Ryan, I assume sometime before then you'll get us, what you do, and then we'll have that, to either look at or not while we do our own, prior to our next meeting, is that, how you see it?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll mail it
and
to your
that's gonna
house.
be in March, right, the next meeting,
March 3rd,
cause we don't have another one in February.
first Monday in March. March 3rd.
March 3rd, okay.
Alright, so the fiscal year 21, which our next item 5C is fiscal year 21 budget discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess, how do you wanna start that one off?
So on March 3rd, I will be presenting the town administrator budget. That's sort of the anchor that moves the budget process along and officially starts it.
Yep.
We have some data right now that's not good. So none of the assessments that we normally get that we're hoping hold the line have come in lower. And the initials numbers from the school budget subcommittee, which
Suck.
does change, are very high. So.
You're kidding, again?
Yeah,
Jeez.
that's it, yeah.
So I'll show you.
Mm.
This is not an exact science, but it is. So on the how do we get through issues side of this, we've invited the school committee and the finance committee and the board of selectmen and the administration to come and have a workshop so that each side can say, because the school side is being hammered by revenue issues and other budget stressors that all the decision makers in town need to be aware of as well, and the town side as well. So our state aid went down. There's all kinds of contributing factors. So if you look at this sort of mystical formula that's up here, I can kind of break it down. So this 36 million number, that is the first number that Quabbin is here, the first indication of what their budget might be. So this is a very high, 5.5% increase of their operating budget from last year.
Which was a 1.8 or 1.9% increase last year, so this would be triple.
Yes. So this represents 1.8 million. So what that number would do, I don't have a strong hold on what their debt numbers or district revenue numbers would be. They're highlighted here. These revenue numbers come right from the state, and we haven't seen more than $30 a child in a long time, so don't expect any relief there. In fact, last year it went down in the Senate process. So here is this column right here. What that would mean approximately, because this isn't a finalized budget, and it's for the school committee to calculate that final budget. But that number would equal 5.378 million. So our assessment last year was 4.731. So the difference is
600.
a little more than 600 and let's see, 22,000.
What was the percent for us last year?
It ended up at 6%.
6%?
Each percent
So what-
50,000.
So
Each
what
percent
would
is
this do?
50,000. This is a 13.19% increase.
God.
So looking at the numbers, we are second highest projected assessment impact, and that's because our minimum local contribution was the second highest. Hardwick is at 17% here, Barry at 11, New Braintree at a little under 10, and Oakham at 12. So no one expects this to be the final number. This is a wants number, but it should be called the board's attention that we have $212,000 in new revenue this year that we can spend. That's before you spend on anything. So a $620,000 increase in the school budget would be 3 times more than what we have that's new. So we would have to cut $400,000 from our budget before we even talked about adding anything on the municipal side or Monty Tech or any of the other assessments that haven't come in yet. So again,
It's the
If it-
same game.
Yeah.
if it came down to,
Every-
my worry is if it comes down to what would be reasonable compared to here, it's the same as last year. So at a 6% assessment increase, which is where this goes if you bring it down to say a 1.7%.
It's part of the game.
If you bring it down to that number, we still have a $350,000 deficit. That's without free cash, so the real deficit's $250 if you just put 100 free cash in there, which we've planned for. Could conceivably carve 50,000 out, which would really cut into any of the last cushions we have. I'm not going to recommend that non-union increases get cut out, but that's 17,000, so that doesn't get you much. So you're left with.
Excuse me if you interrupt me, I just can't imagine that the other 4 towns aren't reacting the way we're reacting.
No, they will. I mean, that's why 3 of them last year didn't have much of
That's a huge
a effect.
increase.
I'm looking to.
Yeah.
There would be about, if it went down to a reasonable number, 6%, and we cut and we did everything we could, you're still going to have a $150,000 hole. So you could either plug that with free cash, which is a horrible idea,
Yep.
or you could use reserves, which is again not a good idea, or you're going to cut, and that there's nothing left to cut.
Can't use the stabilization.
You could, but
Mhm.
it's going to hurt our bond rating.
Yeah.
We're going to borrow for a school roof maybe.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So there's going to be a decision point, and finance committee's meeting next week as well to kind of hear these numbers. I also don't want to present a budget in March that's out of line with, because I could present a balanced budget, put the schools at 3%, but if it's not realistic,
No, that's what you should do.
I-
So we've got, just to sort of jump in real quick, I mean, it's better that it's across the board this year. Last year, we other towns sort of wanted to be on our, but, they had minor increases, there wasn't much for them to do. But, I've met with 2 of the select boards so far with the plan to meet with the other 2 as well, and the fact that everybody, it sounds like they're 11 to 17% increase wise this year, and the amount of sort of support, I think this is, I think it's important to use whatever percent makes sense for the town when you do those evaluations.
Do you think they would approach it as a block of the 5 towns?
Well, I'm not, I don't know, I'm just saying for us to
Yeah.
present, what we
Mhm.
think we can afford, I mean, that's what we're doing as we move forward through the years here to try to combine, our, overall, budgeting, scheme from the municipal side as a 5-town sort of unit to the schools. Part of that is gonna be what we can afford, so I think we start no time like the present with that. I mean, we're not making decisions tonight, I'm just
no,
saying,
I know,
I mean,
I'm trying to gauge where.
I get you. I'm part of the.
The service loss, so it comes down to a reasonable number, 6%. We do everything we can to salvage, and you still got to cut 150. You're talking about people and services, so you would have to bring service levels down to, 10 years ago levels, which I think it's hard to comprehend for some because the economy hasn't been better in a long time, but we're talking about cuts that might equate to the recession levels. So, and then there's no relief in sight, so if it's 6% again next year, which has been the last 2, it's gonna compound. So there either needs to be additional resources or everybody coming together. And I just wanna be very clear that the schools are also facing unprecedented budget challenges as well that need to be heard. In comparison, it's not a simple cut your budget.
No, that was my next question. Whether or not there were, the bullet points on why it was what it was. Just to sort of start off, was there, special education requirement, under non-funded mandates, were there things like that that were part of the initial.
Their health insurance number is
Yeah.
very high. They added a lot of health insurance, which we talk about the same thing. You want a cushion for this ad. They had a lot of people come on January 1st.
Yeah.
Who knows why? employees do what they need to do to take care of their families, so we never begrudge that. The second thing is our required local contribution is one of the highest in the region, again, because of the property values here in Hubbardston, and the median income is higher than our peers. So the required local contribution is higher, so that pushes us, the minimum dollars we'd have to spend no matter what the school increase is up. Right, that combined with a decrease in school revenue means the schools are being squeezed on both ends, so they try and push that back out to get that revenue from assessments. So they have a tough challenge too.
They do, and
If you had to cut 1.8 million from their budget request, they're gonna be talking the same way we are, so.
no doubt, no doubt. So we trying to not make it sort of adversarial right off the bat, which is why I wish we could be part of the process earlier.
Which is, we've gotta have, and I would recommend the board send a rep to, the finance committee meeting on the 11th, just to, I know that, the superintendent has committed to being there.
Yep.
So, if we can interject before they have a budget number set, and kinda shape a narrative and go together to town meeting with one problem, it's a lot better than, here's our budget, here's their budget, pick one. Residents don't like that, so.
So Sheila Mir, the superintendent, said she can be at that finance committee meeting at probably 7 o'clock. It sounded like 7:30.
She'll be there at 7:30.
7:30, right? Because she's
So-
got another commitment. But you know, if anybody can make it, please.
That's right here,
It is
Here.
Yeah.
on when, the 11th?
Monday the 11th. We start
No,
at 6.
Tuesday.
Oh, what's today?
Today's the 3rd.
I'm sorry, then it's the 10th.
So it's Tuesday. Oh,
The email,
Monday
I
the
think,
10th?
said the 11th.
Which date? And
It's Tuesday, February 11th.
Okay.
Tuesday. Okay.
It's right here in my personal assistant.
Okay. All right. If anyone's gonna, can they either let me or Ryan know if any select board members, and if we could reach out to Pat too to see if he's gonna be able to go, just so we can know whether or not there's enough of us that a quorum is gonna have to be, and a meeting and all that sort of stuff set. So I guess if we can the next few days, if you guys can just let either me or Ryan know if you plan on going, and then we'll go from there.
I will, I'll definitely go.
Okay.
So-
So
I definitely cannot go.
okay. So
What was the time?
The
6.
finance committee starts at 6. The superintendent said she could be there at 7:30. So we'll be reviewing
So would you
other
want
finances.
us there for the entire meeting or just for the superintendent's part of it?
I would. It would be good to be at a majority of the meeting because it's going to be
For
a lot of the
for
same
whole meeting?
conversation.
Okay, so 6, okay.
And the finance committee is going to have a plan here as well, so it'd be good to mesh them.
Can you make it, Dan?
I don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
Talk to the boss, and then
I know that feeling.
yeah. But anyway, if you could, you're gonna be able to reach out to Pat.
Yeah.
I don't mind doing it, but if you could do it, that'd be great.
Jamie, how about you, do you know?
Yeah, I think I'll be available.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to cast a shot. I'm just trying to prepare.
Yeah. No. Thank you. It's the biggest part of our
Wow.
biggest part of our budget by far. So, talk to any of your town counterparts.
Yes, it's a similar story.
Yeah.
That number for Hardwick would be crushing.
Yeah, I was just looking at that's.
The
How are they gonna? How can
Yeah.
Hardwick manage that
It's
number?
$2 million from last year. 2.2 million and 50. So essentially $2 million between the 5 towns, more than last year. Thinking that us 5 towns can afford an extra $2 million. You know, that's why I get it. It's the first shot at it, but I just was interested to see what some of the other towns had said. We were sort of on our own last year.
yeah, it's so if we did the same exercise in reverse, I could present a town administrator budget that gave us 24-hour fire coverage, added police coverage so they never have to be on a shift by themselves. Maybe add a person to DPW to make them more effective, and add. We only really need
Human resources.
one person for town hall, mostly to help with the human resources, and it would be packaged pretty reasonably as a needs budget, and it would end up being an increase of, say, $300,000 to $400,000.
Right.
I wouldn't present that to you because it's never gonna happen. It's not responsible.
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
I don't understand starting there.
Okay. but we're trying to get there. It's gonna be a long process to make that not the starting point, but that's the ultimate plan. Okay. All right, so more on this?
Yes. So, you just got the budget update. So, in my town administrator's report, you'll be getting a budget update from me almost weekly. So it's one of the biggest things we do. And making sure you're understanding these decision points, because they're going to come quick. And if we need to do something with town meeting in order to solve this, it's going to have to start sooner rather than later. Department report, I met with representatives from the Collins Center to look at our human resources policies, kind of combining all of our policies into one centralized policy book, which will help our employees understand where to find information, and also for us to make sure that we are compliant with every policy that exists, especially in terms of training. They've been very engaged and helpful. We don't think this will take very long. We should have it all implemented by the end of the fiscal year. On the financial management side, the finance team helped me with the Q2 report you saw tonight. We also have been discussing our FY19 audits and coming up with a game plan to make sure that those recommendations are continued to be addressed. And I'm working with the team to go through some of these old stale accounts that exist to make sure that we're getting them off the books and using that money for something to help the town. So an example of that is we have some old grant accounts that can be expended to help. We also have some old capital accounts that we can turn into general fund monies to help fund the capital plan. So just really looking through everything. And then also codifying each account so that there's some of that transition from staff to staff, so that you don't have to do this every time staff changes. It sounds like something that wouldn't happen, but you know, after 10 years, people forget which account does which, and then you have to dig through the paperwork, and it's just time intensive, and you shouldn't have to do it. Been giving you capital project updates. The annex roof and the senior center kitchen will receive their final inspections this month from our building department. Cruiser 2, as I said, will be back in the fleet by this says end of the month, but it'll be by Valentine's Day. That's my goal. The 2 additional procurements will be finalized. I think I already said this, the DPW with their new dump truck, plow truck, and the town clerk you heard tonight finalizing her election hardware. Really undersold how much that was thought through. Every election worker touched it, commented on it, talked about every election they've been involved in, and really engaged with that. So I feel like it's going to be pretty smooth. Then for recognition, so Christina Sutcliffe, she's our planning board administrative assistant. In addition to her regular board support, they've been using her to research bylaws and help prepare town meeting recommendations and support the board in more than just a administrative way. She's also been helping me with affordable housing recommendations for the planning board and for you, talking about sale of land and potential other sites that we might be able to use for that effort. She's really going above and beyond, and I think it's worth pointing that out to you, how dedicated someone who works 16 hours a week can be to the town.
And helping out with the benchmarking as well.
Yes, I mean, you saw her intelligence level and her organization.
Oh, yeah.
I use her talents whenever we can in many of the products. You know, I wish we had her here full time. So.
Okay, well that's great. Okay, thanks for that. We don't have any policies to review, correct?
No policies. Be back in March. You'd be excited.
All right, we've done the appointments and resignations for tonight, and no additional wage authorizations.
No.
We have one meeting minute to review and approve. All 5 of us were there. Obviously, Pat's not here tonight, so if anyone has any issues with it, please bring it up. Otherwise, we'll take a motion to approve or not.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of January 28th, 2020.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes, okay. And as I said, Pat's not here, so, committee updates, just real quick, we finally have a meeting date, which was just set, and confirmed today with Mass DOT for the, public hearing for the town center reconstruction project. That is gonna be May 5th, Thursday, May 5th at 7 PM right here. It's gonna be posted, it was already a townwide email sent out today. We're gonna put it on the Town Center Committee Facebook page, and hopefully you can put it on the town Facebook page, and wherever else, social media wise, and we can get the word out. We've got a little bit of time here, and what that will be is that'll be our engineers, TEC, with the sort of approved 25% modified, 25% design, which is, as I said many times before, is more like a 90% of the actual project. That's just what it's called at this point. And then Mass DOT representatives will be here, as well as a bunch of members of the Town Center Committee to go over the project in detail and go over any questions anyone has. It's another step in the process, and then beyond that, and in parallel with that, TEC is working on the additional design from the $75,000 we allocated at that special town meeting, and all of this is sort of under the grand plan of it getting through this process, and then us going to annual town meeting with the final ask of $75,000, which would be the final ask for the entire design of the project, and moving forward towards ultimately scheduling the project for construction. So that's the update there. And nothing else as far as committees from me. Matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair. I have none. Anyone else at the table or anywhere else have anything else they want to bring up?
Nope.
I do not.
No? Okay, public press, question, answer, anything come up you guys want to bring up, ask about? No?
Move to adjourn.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, Chris, second. Discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Adjourn at 8:09.